Coronation presents Firebreaker, The Legend of George and the Dragon, Chapter 7, In the Court of the King.
Whoa! Aya has been chosen for sacrifice to the dragon? Is George gonna save her?
What do you think, Sebastian?
Well, he better hurry up. I feel tension.
I know. Pretty good storytelling. Huh?
Oh, yeah.
In the great hall, the princess raised an eyebrow and pointed at George.
This is the Dragon Slayer young Demetrius has brought to us, Father.
Perhaps all he need do is discuss terms with Caicos.
George stepped forward and bowed.
Your Majesty,
Discuss terms? Father, all of Silene hangs in the balance.
The princess gently grasped her father's face in her hands and drew him near.
I beg you, Father. Wake from your slumber. Come to your senses. Listen to my voice.
The king gazed at her.
We must not lose another innocent soul to that demon.
Yes, my dear. Caicos, I am so weary.
The princess kissed the king's hands, then turned to face George.
So, tell us, Roman, exactly how many dragons have you slain?
well...
If I may, Princess, Sir George, George, has repeatedly demonstrated his courage and skill. Why, he saved me from a...
Dragons? How many dragons? Ha!
Demetrius whispered in George's ear.
The spear! Tell them about the spear!
I have this sacred spear.
But he's a Roman soldier. How can we possibly trust a Roman?
Now, wait a minute.
So how long have you been in league with the Empire?
You don't understand. They rescued me 8 years ago when I was
All right, well, how many battles have you been in? You're a legate by now, I suppose.
well, I was...
A centurion, at least. Oh, he's nothing but a Roman foot soldier.
My lady, it's true. I was a Roman soldier. But in my heart, in my soul, I was born and I will ever be a Cappadocian.
Aya glanced at the king.
Cappadocian. You are from Cappadocia. Then you know. Did you have family there?
Silence. One could hear a pin drop in the great hall. George looked down at his feet. Tears came to his eyes. The princess looked to Demetrius. George slowly raised his head.
My own father sacrificed his life protecting me from the evil of dragons. He passed down to me this mighty spear, Ascalon.
George raised the spear in front of him for all to see.
That I, too, might be willing to offer my own life to free others from slavery and death. I may not have slain any dragons yet, but to avenge my noble parents and to free Silene, that is exactly what I will do for you.
A different kind of silence settled over those in the great hall as King Cosmo began to awaken fully from his stupor, stepped forward, and took his daughter's hand.
Father.
My dear, long have I slumbered, but I hear you now. I hear him. This young warrior may be our savior.
George smiled at Demetrius. Plisto and the dragon cult marched through the streets of Silene, attempting to gather support. They entered the city square.
Caicos the Great demands another sacrifice. The king's own daughter, Aya. With her death, peace shall reign in Silene.
The people of Silene stood in a deafening silence. So many of their young had been offered to the dragon. Some even found the news a relief. At least it wasn't one of them. But in the back alleys of the city, the network of resistance fighters began to whisper a different story. News was spreading that a warrior had arrived, a champion worthy to face the Lizard King. Outside the stable, Zoe barked orders to a small crowd.
The dragon colt approaches the palace hill from the south. Nico, send your fastest runners to the city's other quarters.
Michael's ears pricked up and he poked his white nose through the stable gate.
We gather at the north end. We must get to the palace before they do. Hurry!
But Zoe, is it true? Did your brother find a warrior?
I saw him with my own eyes. Cappadocian, I think. Demetrius and Aya herself snuck him into the palace this evening.
He must be very strong then.
Doesn't look like much, but he carries a strange spear. I don't know, Nico. I have a feeling. No time now. Hurry and tell the others.
In the palace, her mind racing, Aya paced back and forth nervously. In the corner of the hall, George rested Ascalon against the wall.
This boy is not enough, Father. Others have tried and have failed, and Kekos grows stronger every day.
And every day our people grow weaker. The dragon strikes fear into the heart of even the strongest man. We have prayed so long, and now...
The weary king placed his hand on George's shoulder.
I believe our prayers have been answered.
But you could still lead them, Father. You could lead the resistance.
My daughter, your love for me clouds your reason. I am old, my dear. We are so few.
My lady, this is his destiny. With the power of Ascalon, I am certain he will triumph.
She looked deep into the king's eyes, then slowly turned to George.
If it is my father's will, so be it. But you must act quickly, Cappadocian, before the beast claims another of my people.
George knelt before Cosmo and Aya.
It shall be done.
Zoe led the small band of the resistance through the shadows toward the palace hill. As they rounded the last corner, they stopped in horror. A group of cultists with wolf-sized dragons on leashes blocked the street in front of them.
And just where do you think you're going?
More cultists emerged behind Zoe's band, blocking off their escape. Their golden masks hid their expressions, but the resistance band knew they were trapped. In the palace hall, the king raised George up from his knees. Aya narrowed her eyes.
So, what is your plan, if any?
A bit nervous, but with growing confidence, George paced before them.
Well,
George pointed at Ascalon.
we fight. Dragon dies. I think it's as simple as that.
That's your plan.
That's my plan.
You know it breathes fire, right?
Yep.
And vomits burning acid?
Yes. Yes, I do.
And can cut a man in half with one bite.
Yeah.
But did you know that its speech is hypnotic, and only the strongest of will and intellect can resist?
He remembered the hypnotic eyes that had held him transfixed as a boy.
Yes.
The presence that had never quite left him, and which grew only stronger as he neared Silene. Suddenly, the doors burst open. Plisto and 20 of his cultists poured into the hall.
What is the meaning of this? Guards, remove these intruders!
Why, it was your own guards that let us in, my dear king.
The cultists spread out into the great hall. On their arms and hands were strange green boils that looked like scales.
The great Kekos has spoken. The chosen victim is Princess Aya.
No!
Seize her
The king drew the only weapon he could find, a dull ceremonial sword.
Get away from her!
The cult easily disarmed the old king. George's instinct to fight took over. He felt the rush of fire inside him, such as he had felt when he faced Pravis in the camp. He narrowed his gaze and angrily grabbed Ascalon.
Let her go!
George heaved with all his aggression, but suddenly Ascalon became incredibly heavy, like a great boulder. Its weight knocked him to the ground, and it fell from his hand.
What?
George stared incredulously at the spear. The cultists surrounded George, Demetrius, and the king and bound them.
Prepare the princess.
They grabbed Aya and led her toward the door.
Let me go! Get your scaly hands off of me!
Take the others to the tower.
I promise I will save you!
The princess nodded at George.
So be it, Cappadocian.
The cult guards roughly threw George, Demetrius, and King Cosmo into adjacent prison cells in a tall tower that overlooked the city square.
Release us at once! This is treason!
The treason is yours, your majesty. Treason against the almighty Caicos.
The guard gestured at the small windows in each of their cells.
Enjoy the view.
From up in the palace tower, through his window, George could see the entire town. Below him, Aya stood chained to a stake in the city square, surrounded by cultists. It was as if the whole city was watching, some openly weeping, others chanting, "Sacrifice, sacrifice, sacrifice." And beyond, outside the walls of the city, he saw the dark, swampy lake.
Caicos.
Next time on Firebreaker.
Son, I beg you, remember your people, remember your father.
Timothy paused for a moment, his eyes searching back and forth. Then he closed his eyes tightly, stepped out of the tower, and shut the door behind him.
You have been listening to Firebreaker, the legend of George and the Dragon. Firebreaker is a Coronation Media production, starring David Henrie and Elizabeth Tabish, directed by Jim Morlino, written by Jim Morlino and Dominic Morlino, original score by Kevin Kasker, with sound design by Michael Moen, executive producer Bill Phillips, executive producer and showrunner Gary Gores. For a full cast and crew listing, please visit our website, firebreakerseries.com.